what sort of programming and events can you plan to get more people into the tap room?
Goat yoga.
Yeah, goat yoga, goat trivia, goat karaoke. We're entering a bold new goat-powered economy.
We are entering some sort of interesting economy in 2025. I'm very bullish on goats. Going to be a big year for goats in 25. Hey, Cody, what's up?
Not a whole lot, Isaac. How are you doing today?
Cody, I am phenomenal. Today we're going to be discussing our 2025 beer branding trends review.
Oh yeah, it's time.
It is high time. And our listeners can read the this year's report over at cododesign.com. We'll link to that in the show notes, of course. So what we're going to do here is discuss the overall structure of the piece. What are our overarching categories? And then we'll kind of pick and choose a few sections to go deep on along the way.
That's correct. And in case we have any new listeners joining in, should probably explain what this is. What would you call this? It's not like a white paper, but report doesn't really seem quite right either. It's a long article with 4 exclusive newsletter issues.
It's a long article with 4 exclusive newsletters. Yeah, you explained it. That's what I would call it, yeah.
I think this year's review ended up clocking in above 20,000 words, so I'm not sure if that counts the newsletters or not, but...
it does not, actually. I didn't count the newsletters.
Okay. So this year's review is approximately 50 million words long then. And you can tell it's good because of how long it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's how that works.
At least it's thorough. Yeah. This is our annual write-up on what we see shaping the beer and bev alc industry right now, and over the next year or two. And as a quick caveat, everything we're talking about in this article, on this episode today, it's presented through our lens as a branding firm primarily serving the beer industry. Mm-hmm. So we pull all the stuff from Project Fieldwork. So what we're seeing, what we're hearing in all of our work with breweries and all manner of bev alc groups. So distillers, cideries, cannabis groups, coffee brands, on and on. What we're seeing in our work with these folks across the country and internationally as well on occasion.
A lot more coffee work lately. Yeah, now that you mention it. It kind of came out of nowhere. I like it.
This is pulled from hundreds of conversations we have each year with folks at all 3 tiers of the beer industry. So founders and CMOs, retailers, consumers, wholesalers, the whole bit.
Right. And you mentioned it a moment ago. We've pulled 4 exclusive topics from that report that are only going out to our Beer Branding Trends newsletter subscribers. If you've listened to the show at all for a while, you know the drill. Yeah, we're sending that out to just the newsletter list.
Yeah, and we have like several dozen listeners to this podcast.
Easily 30 or 40.
But the newsletter itself, wow. Yeah, it's popping off over there. Where are we at now for subscribers?
This is kind of a vanity number because we go through a couple times a year and remove inactive folks. But right now it's right at 10,000. So again, that's a vanity number because it doesn't matter. But yeah. Social proof, I guess, is the real term.
So they're all going to be receiving exclusives that are not included in the main report, including, hang on, I just had these.
It's an amateur hour
okay,
here.
So number 1, how to future-proof your flagships. Mm-hmm. Number 2, how soon should your brewery jump on a trend? Number 3, is a cannabis beverage right for your brewery? And finally, number 4, how legacy breweries can sell more beer. So head over to beerbrandingtrends.com to subscribe and read all of those when they come out.
We're also going to, because we have such a stark disparity between newsletter subscribers and podcast listeners, again, 15 podcast listeners compared to the many thousands of newsletter, we're going to cut episodes on those exclusive topics as well. And but so you can hear those here, but you should subscribe. And I'm sure you already are if you're listening to this, but that's enough of a preamble, probably. So 2025 beer branding trends, ready to get into it?
I am. Let's do it.
Okay. So it's 2025. And these are our beer branding trends. Now, this is going to be a rip-roaring time for the beer business, just like last year, right?
Selling beer has never been easier.
Yeah, it's easier today than it ever has been. Cody, would you say that the overall vibes are off currently, or are they good to go?
The beer vibes are askew for sure.
They're askance. All right. So it's another tough year. You know that. You listening right now know that because you live it. You're living it all day, every day. We're seeing several clients succeed right now, though. Several meaning many of our clients are doing really well. A lot of folks out there are doing well. That is either posting good year-over-year numbers, finding incremental growth, or just gritting your teeth and grinding it out. So what this report covers is how and where we are seeing breweries win today. That's kind of the overarching focus.
Yes. So branding and brand strategy, package design, web design, marketing, that's how we're framing all of this.
Mhm.
So we've divided this report into 4 sections. The first being brewery brand and portfolio strategy. Then we move on to brand architecture. Then we're talking about beer and beyond, so specific beverage trends we're seeing right now. And finally, we end on package design trends. So this is kind of a favorite every year.
Sure.
We start section 1, brewery brand and portfolio strategy, by exploring why breweries are rebranding right now.
Yeah. So what we've done in this section is pull out a handful. I've got the article up here. It's a handful of the most recurring pain points we see and hear in our project work. So just for some context, CODO's worked with more than 90 breweries now. About half of those, the vast majority of our work really since 2018 has centered around rebranding in some capacity. So looking back at all those projects, plus obviously what we're seeing kind of in the immediate term over the last year, right now, this like up to this minute, like literally as of, even yesterday, having a kickoff for a rebrand. What are we hearing again and again and again?
We should probably take this time to mention that we will be presenting at CBC on this topic this year in April.
Yeah, I hadn't planned to do that, but we should. Yeah, what is CBC and who, what is this? Did you book me something without consulting me?
Yeah. No, it's the Craft Brewers Convention. Come on, it's
Conference.
the big time.
What are you doing?
It's the Super Bowl.
It's a Super Bowl
of boring marketing.
here in our hometown. Yeah, it's CBC. Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. So we are giving a presentation. We should be better about commercials. Our seminar is when and when not to rebrand your brewery, with the delightful subhead, how to evolve your brand without losing fans along the way. At a glance, we are going to be covering a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about in this section. So specifically, why are breweries rebranding today? What are common pain points? What are common goals? How do you measure and assign value to brand equity? What are the different ways you can refresh, from a package refresh, brand refresh, rebrand, incremental rebrand, and then how to launch all of that in a cohesive manner at a glance. We're still actually building the presentation as we speak. So I think that's a good enough overview for now.
And do we have a date set yet for the presentation?
We do. Hold on one second. It's a Thursday, May 1, Thursday, May 1. And again, yeah, here in Indianapolis, which is exciting. So we don't have to travel. It'll be in our hometown. And that's really nice.
Yeah, it'll be nice not complaining about traveling for once. Also, we are just about moved into our new building, so we can show it off to our clients and friends. I suppose it's okay to talk about that at this point.
We need to get on the same page before hitting record. Yeah, I wasn't planning to. I think we're going to record an episode about the building at some point. I'm still kind of kicking around if that makes sense, but yeah, tell me about that.
Sure.
So and then at some point we'll talk about 2025 beer brand.
I was going to say the listeners are not here to hear us talk about our real estate moves.
Yeah, no.
we bought a new building. It's cool. If you're in town, that's in Indianapolis this year for CBC, please hit us up. Come check it out.
Well, actually, if we're wasting everyone's time, we should also maybe mention a few events that we're planning on the theme of talking about stuff that's too early. These are still taking shape, but subscribe to the Beer Branding Trends newsletter to stay in the loop. We're going to have a big blowout with our friends at Half Liter. This is not like a big networking thing. It's just going to be beautiful German lagers, German food, polka band. It's going to be super, super fun. The other event is the exact opposite of that. We're going to be hosting, we're still, again, putting this together, but we are planning to host an intimate gathering at our new office for marketing directors, in-house designers, brand directors. We're still trying to figure out kind of where the line is for who we do and don't include. And we don't want to gatekeep, but we want to make sure people aren't in the room selling. So we want folks to grab some beer and talk shop. And really, I don't know if we're going to be facilitating conversations so much as just getting people from all over the country together in a room to kind of discuss what is and isn't working at their brewery. So a lot more info to come, and we should probably move on here because that's probably like a 15-minute sidebar.
Correct. Join the BBT newsletter if you're interested in that stuff.
Okay.
There will be updates.
Yes, please do. Okay. We were talking about reasons we're seeing breweries rebrand right now, and I'll just speed run through these to make up for what we just did. So, big reasons: sales are flat, things are going well, and you want to maintain that momentum. So that's a separate point, obviously. It's just time. We hear that idea a lot. Rebranding ahead of an important brand architecture move. So you're planning to do something structural to your business, your overarching business, and a rebrand should be an important part of that. Or an interesting one that we are actually seeing a few times in our project work and out in the wild with stuff that we haven't worked on is cleaning up a poorly performing previous rebrand. There's actually, well, Lagunitas, we can just talk about it. Very high profile brand, obviously. I think they're rebranding for like the third or fourth time in like 4 or 5 years. So pretty crazy there. Anything that you want to dive into here?
I would say in the interest of time, we can probably keep moving. The only thing that might be worth mentioning is the first point regarding flat sales.
Mm-hmm.
We frame that in the context of how the broader industry is performing. We already touched on how things are not so great.
Yeah, the vibes are off. The vibes.
They're off.
They're off.
The vibes. Yeah. So most people's sales are flat, if not down right now. Rebranding can be a valuable exercise, but only if you've got everything else squared away. You make great beer and products. You have a dialed in portfolio. Your sales program is in good shape. You have a great team. We can really go back to the classic 4 or 7 or whatever the number is. The P's here: product, price, place, promotion, people, process, marketing class.
I don't know. I don't know that I could do the full 7 if you put a gun to my head right now. I could probably do 5.
I would start probably naming unrelated P's and just making stuff up if I were forced to do that.
Falcon.
Ponies. If those are all squared away and your sales are flat and not in a total free fall, then a rebrand or a refresh of some kind could be a really great move. Anything else to add?
No, other than, come to our CBC seminar for more information on that for sure. We're going to be giving a few case studies to highlight this idea, especially package refreshes. But the next topic here in our 2025 Beer Branding Trends review explores how legacy breweries can sell more beer. And this is actually our first exclusive. So the newsletter subscribers are going to get to see this one all by themselves, as we mentioned earlier.
Can learn all of our dark secrets.
The darkest secrets. Well, you're going to learn what we see our successful clients doing anyway. And we're going to record a companion podcast on this one, like I mentioned. So we can probably just move on into the package refresh section.
We had a big editorial focus on package refreshes last year, so 24. And we're continuing to see this trend right now in our project work. Lots and lots of package refresh work right now. And this situation is simply where a brewery will revamp its packaging, but leave the core brand strategy. So positioning of the company, messaging, voice, values and value propositions, all that upstream stuff. A lot of that we're leaving it intact, leaving it in place to focus more on the packaging execution itself. And this can be a really simple update where you're knocking some dust off. It can be a much more heavy lift where you're actually making pretty substantial sweeping changes.
Yeah.
In either case, you're leaving the strategy and brand identity itself as is. You're not really touching that upstream stuff.
Yeah. And so in this section, we're going to explore the upsides and downsides of this approach. So why or when you might consider a package refresh versus a heavier lift rebrand. We explore brand equity and how that factors into this process. We discuss where we see these projects falter. So specifically, I think the fine line here is, strategy or no. And should that be part of this process, or can you? I mean, one of the reasons why this process is so attractive is you can save a lot of money. You don't have to tackle core strategy and positioning, and if you can bypass that, again, everything just goes faster as well. So we end with a caveat here of making sure that you're trying not to solve a deeper brand problem with a package refresh. I think that's the big takeaway.
Yeah. That draws a finer point on what we explored in the rebrand section earlier.
It does. And I think this section is valuable because we've seen some major kind of high profile refreshes or outright rebrands that just didn't really move the needle over the last few years. Not in our work, thankfully, but we see it out in the wild. And all of those cases, I'll just name Anchor. I don't want to name any others, but like they highlight that a rebranding or a package refresh, however you want to tackle it, like throwing money at design, they didn't really get at whatever the core issue really was. So you want to be careful that you're throwing the right lever there. Sorry for including CODO, all the design firms that were like, no, you need to rebrand. You need to
Yeah,
do it.
they don't always listen to us. Okay. Our next topic here is another Beer Branding Trends newsletter exclusive with the provocative title, How to Future-Proof Your Flagships.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to record an episode on this topic as well. I think you mentioned that earlier, correct?
We are, and this is a real. I'm proud of this issue. It's a fun one. So we will leave the provocative subject here and move on. Let's see here. Our next topic is on the evolving role of seasonal beers in brewery portfolios and what we're seeing. This is an interesting topic across the country. So this probably warrants its own episode at some point as well, but maybe we can just kind of dive into it here just briefly.
Yeah, it does. But just to quickly give folks a preview of what we're covering here, we're discussing how seasonal sales trends are changing, for better and definitely for worse.
Yeah.
We cover if it makes sense to push a fan favorite seasonal into a year-round offering, like make that move.
Obviously a very case-by-case scenario.
Right. I love to crack open a pumpkin beer in April.
You and my wife, yeah. I don't know. I would drink an Oktoberfest year. I'm trying to think of if there's I don't know. I'd drink a Märzen any time of the year, an Oktoberfest as well. So
yeah, just don't call it an Oktoberfest and I'll be good.
Yeah,
we've seen a few breweries do this. I think Bell's in particular with Oberon probably was a good example from 20 years ago. Still a beautiful beer. I don't have any data to show whether or not that was a good move, but an interesting move either way. What else here? We cover how to differentiate your seasonal packaging from your flagships, give a few examples of how you can clearly denote the limited nature or seasonality of these products. So cool topic there. After that, we roll into a continuation of something we first explored last year. So style names as positioning tools.
I feel like we discussed this on every project as of late. And this is one of my favorite overall trend, I guess I'll just call it a trend that we're seeing in our project work. The takeaway here is that it focuses on breweries and consumers all kind of just moving away from formal style designations. And along with that, kind of other traditional craft beer trappings. So what kind of hops are in this beer? Oh, this is a bière de garde or an alt beer. Like this one's brewed with this wonder grain. It's just kind of too much, and people. I think you can interpret it different ways, but I think there is data that kind of points to consumers just not really caring about this stuff anymore.
Are you speaking Elofonio?
Fonio. No, of course not. I don't want to get
Fonio.
I don't want to get chokeslammed by Garrett Oliver. The move we're seeing now, he's lurking outside, ready to yell at me. The move we're seeing now is just in our work anyway, is to drop as much of this kind of extra stuff as you can and just meet consumers where they are. So, what does the beer taste like? Give me a familiar index here. This is something that like RTDs and F&Bs have done really well, and we're starting to see that creep over into beer. So, don't tell me that it's got Citra and Simcoe and X and Y and Z. What does it taste like? What does it pair with? I think is still a good thing to do. What occasion best suits this beer? So when should you drink it? With whom should you drink it? And then you position and name and brand the beer around those ideas. So again, the traditional craft beer trappings, the 3C hops, yeast strains, brewing esoterica, and on, just kind of like that stuff is still cool and does still matter to some people. But by and large, I think you're kind of giving yourself, you're kind of maybe creating more friction the more you focus on that stuff.
Sure. And as far as using the style designation as an opportunity for positioning, we're seeing this a lot in our work. If you're interested in this idea, you should listen to a previous episode with Virginia Beer Company, where we walk through how we built the cold drinking beer brand. It's a really great example of this idea in action.
It is. It's good beer too. We'll link to that in the show notes. Final topic in section 1 of our 2025 Beer Branding Trends Review is about how breweries can win in the on-premise. That probably could have been an exclusive too, but
maybe it could have been more provocative, but
I don't know. Clickbaity.
Here we cover a few things like rethinking your hours and course service. So, say you're a taproom brewery, but can you expand hours to serve coffee earlier in the day? Could you become a lunch spot? How do you
Seeing
slide
seeing
into
a
the
seeing a lot of that. Yeah.
yeah, how do you slide into those other time slots during the day? And we have a few clients, Fertile Ground down in Mississippi specifically comes to mind, that are doing this right now. And it seems to be working well as just a way to get revenue coming in at other times of the day. We talk about the importance of expanding your offerings beyond beer. So obviously, this will be limited by your licensing, your local regulations, but can you serve wine and cocktails and NA options? Are you able to produce any of those things? What sort of programming and events can you plan to get more people into the tap room?
Goat yoga.
Yeah, goat yoga, goat trivia, goat karaoke, goat karaoke, goat yoki, goat yo. That's not working.
Goki. Yeah.
We're entering a bold new goat powered economy.
We are entering some sort of interesting economy in 2025. I don't. I'm very bullish on goats. Going to be a big year for goats in 25. We're also discussing the importance in this section, not of goats, but of food. So offering real food in your tap room, as well as a shift towards proper hospitality. This is anecdotal, but we're seeing a lot more of our clients actually talk about like proper training and reading interesting books and stuff like that for like just genuine like more like restaurant side hospitality. So that's kind of cool. And we'll end on an idea about how to connect the off premise, so your packaging, with the on premise. This is something we've talked about for years, but the idea of how your brewery's brand should precede you. And we'll kind of leave that there and let you go read about that in the article. And that actually wraps up our first section, 20 minutes into the conversation now. So
Look at us go.
yeah, we're hitting it. So section 2, keep rolling, is on brand architecture and the sorts of brand architecture moves we're seeing in our project work right now. Cody, we should probably quickly define that term before we actually dive into this. Please.
Sure. Brand architecture is a framework for determining how all your brands, your products, the things that you do, current and future, how those interact with one another. So how do specific brands relate or differ? How are they positioned and named? How are they priced? How does all this help you build your business and sell more stuff? And we believe that every brewery in the country needs to be up to speed on these concepts in order to compete in the coming years, and probably a few of the previous years as well. This was the topic of our latest book, the Beyond Beer Handbook, and we're seeing brand architecture pop up every day in our project work.
Yeah. And so some examples of what that actually looks like would be your brewery's considering spinning a best-selling beer into its own brand, with a couple line extensions, or you're wondering if you can line extend to a new style. We've had a lot of interesting conversation around that, or maybe even a new category. So that'd be like a brand extension. You're planning to acquire another brewery or brand. You're not sure. That's like an exciting move that then just opens up this huge can of worms. You got to figure out, like, do you roll this new brand in under your parent brand? Is that the right choice? Do you let it stand on its own? Like, what are you buying in the first place? We are actually working on a larger series on that topic as well. You're wanting to launch an entirely new category. You're not sure if your parent brand can credibly play there. I can keep rattling these off, but I'll kind of just stop there and say that other than rebranding breweries and kind of like package refreshes, which I would lump in with rebranding, brand architecture has become the most common, I don't want to call it service, but like thing we're helping breweries work through right now. It's so common. And so on that note, we kick off this section with some fun sub-brand use cases. So Cody, apologies in advance. Can you also please define sub-brands for our listeners? We may have to drop a few definitions here just so we can kind of make this more standalone.
Yeah, no apology needed. A sub-brand is a brand within your parent brand. It is closely connected to your parent brand, but it has some degree of separation so that it can stand on its own. Not entirely, but you could scale it that way over time. A sub-brand still carries the same values that you should intuitively link it to the parent brand, but it might focus on a specific audience with further defined attributes, if I can talk like an alien, attributes and benefits that might not be offered by the parent brand alone. So you can get out of your lane a little bit and you can experiment. But this is something that allows you to build stronger bonds with your existing customers, while you can still expand your overall footprint here too. You can dip your toes into new categories and audiences and just kind of poke around to find growth.
Yeah, your parent brand's still the main purchasing driver with sub brands, but that is the reason someone buys a product. But for a sub brand, you start to have the beginnings of its own identity as well. And so, what we're seeing in our work would be specifically building a sub brand to create a premium line. And then, kind of on the opposite, building sub brands to not, I wouldn't say sub premium as much as those definitions matter to the American beer buyer, but like creating a decidedly kind of budget play.
Yeah, that's an interesting one there.
It is. We've got a fun heritage IP project that centers around that idea as well right now. And the third sub brand use case that we're seeing in our work is creating a brand that can travel. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, and it's one that comes up a lot. This can work well when your parent brand centers around an esoteric thing. So, a specific place or town or a landmark that doesn't really mean anything to someone who has never heard of it. We mentioned it a while back, but our work with Virginia Beer Company to build the cold drinking beer brand is a really great example. What we found was that, selling beer across state lines with a certain state in your name was tough.
Yeah. I live in North Carolina or West Virginia. Why do I care about Virginia beer?
Right. It's a double-edged sword where it works really well locally, but you might struggle with it as you branch out, depending. Some markets export better than others. I think of like San Diego or, kind of those more aspirational markets.
Malibu. Yeah.
Yeah. In the case of Virginia
Des
Beer
Moines.
Company, they built cold drinking beer specifically to creep out and travel across state lines and not be limited geographically.
Rochdale.
Rochdale. Shout out Rochdale, Indiana.
Council Bluffs. I'm just trying to think.
Floyd's Knobs.
Floyd's.
Yeah.
Gunther, Indiana. All right. We're going to link to that case study in the show notes. And that actually wraps this section up. Our next topic is another exclusive issue or exclusive newsletter called How Soon Should Your Brewery Jump on a Trend? And this is a fun one that explores the different things you might consider aside from legal regulations, of course, to decide, well, not aside from, also including legal regs, to decide when it should make sense to start developing a new product.
Right. So think like a Delta 8 or a cannabis beverage or a hard tea or a non-alcoholic beer.
Right. Yeah. Or I mean, tons of cannabis stuff for sure. But even beyond that, like you mentioned, spirits, coffee, hop water, really anything. New product development is expensive. Launching a brand properly is expensive. And the thing that we kind of honed in on for the article or the exclusive is that you can be too early. You can also be too late. And in either case, you kind of miss the mark. It can be costly. So I'm excited about that topic. We're definitely going to record an issue on that as well. But let's keep rolling here. The next thing we're going to be talking about is House of Brands. And I think we're going to be exploring more of this throughout the editorial side of the newsletter through 25. But yeah, House of Brands. Tell me about that.
We've always kind of thought of this as a big beer strategy, Boston Beer, Diageo, Miller Coors, Brown-Forman, the other 4 or 5 conglomerates that own and produce all Bev Alc brands that you see out in retail.
Yeah, the Illuminati.
Yeah, the still Illuminati. I'm not having good hit rate on puns today.
That's not appropriate or acceptable, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Anyway, we are actually seeing this regularly now with our smaller clients. And while every brewery is small when compared to Miller Coors, I mean like genuinely small.
Yeah.
We're working with outfits and brewery hospitality groups that are producing around 1,000 barrels a year that are all launching multiple brands and leaning into a portfolio or house of brands model. So this isn't a big beer specific thing as you might think it is at first glance.
So what do we outline in the article? Can you run through that real quick?
Yeah, I'll just zip through these. So we've got the following benefits and use cases. So a house of brands approach allows you to offer products to highly targeted niche audiences without worrying about how to adapt your parent brand because you're not really talking about a parent brand. Everything's kind of working out on its own.
Yeah.
House of Brands allows you to quickly seize market opportunities. You bypass all the work and worry of making sure your parent brand works in a new context. You're developing a completely new, at the way it's presented, a completely disconnected thing. You don't have to worry about that so much. But of course, whenever there are benefits, there are caveats, and we've got a few of those as well. This includes, the simple fact that building a house of brands can be challenging for smaller breweries. Takes a lot of resources. They're costly to build properly, both just in the manufacture and in the promotion and marketing and distribution. And finally, capacity. We talk about capacity a lot. It's something that is really easy to overlook when you're thinking about brand architecture overall. these things are not easy to build, so you have to have the staff capacity to fully pull it off. Like, are you ready to essentially start a completely new company every time a new product drops? Yeah, I don't know. Anything else to add there?
I mean, I could just repeat the idea of capacity, but we see that a lot in our work. How many folks have we helped kind of bring in? They launched a brand as like more of a standalone thing, and they found that they just couldn't build it properly, so they needed to bring it back in closer to their brand as like a sub brand or something like that. I mean, you cannot overstate the importance of capacity, and Frank, even if it's frustrating, how big of a bottleneck that is for launching new brands. So yeah, I don't know. We can probably keep rolling here. Section 3 of this report, beer and beyond. So these are the specific beverage trends we're seeing right now. And we start this section off by exploring rather the year of lager. Cody, was 24 actually the year of lager? Finally?
I think it was. And we can probably just stop referencing this concept altogether.
I agree, actually. That does break my heart. But yeah, like it's over. It happened. It is happening.
Maybe it's just the age of lager now. I can find a great lager anywhere in town, almost.
I'm here
And
for it. I like it.
it's definitely a thing. Obviously brewers enjoying and making them, but consumers understanding it better, flocking this way. A lot of we've pointed to a lot of reasons why that's the case. But yeah, we've got a lot of project work to support that as well.
Yeah, and we covered this at length last year for our 25 article here. We've got the following sections within lager. So lager is easy.
Yeah, from a consumer standpoint, anyway. I mean,
It is. Yeah, lager equals beer in many cases. We also have lager is nostalgic. Lager is big business. Lager can be a lifestyle brand platform. And a fun one here, lager gets cold.
tell me a little bit more about lager gets cold.
It's a trend, maybe even a fad, but I'm not sure it matters either way. But we're seeing a lot of brands literally using the word cold in their beer name. And we're seeing it in our project work. We're seeing it out in the wild. And it really overlaps with some of the other stuff we're talking about here. So like, meeting consumers where they are, not focusing on beer styles so much as we are like a specific flavor or occasion. This isn't a Czech lager, it's a cold beer. And here in the article imagery, I'm looking at the beautiful photos we got here. We got cold drinking beer, which we've talked about several times already. We've got cold classics, cold torpedo, Montucky cold snacks, the group that probably kicked this whole thing off. Cold time from Revolution. I saw those in person the other day at Total Wine. Those are beautiful cans. Ice cold beer from our friends up at Left Field Brewery in Toronto. They were early too. I feel like we made that back in like 17 or 18 maybe, and a handful of others as well that we didn't include in the article. So this is a fun kind of like a micro trend fad. I don't know where the line is, but we're seeing it a lot in beer right now.
Yeah, are we seeing the same thing with other kind of those descriptors that crop up a lot, like crisp? Are there 50 beers with crisp in the name right now, or maybe that's around the corner?
Yeah, there probably are, but we're just one agency, in a sea of 9,000 breweries. So I don't know that we're seeing others in our work as much as we are seeing this. I mean, we're seeing like kind of a lot of riffs on not in our work, but just out in the wild. We're seeing a lot of riffing on like pizza wine and stuff like that, like really like occasion based canned wine. But that is certainly outside of what we're talking about today. But all that stuff does shape what we write about, though. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Looking ahead here, I'm surprised and pleased that you included the old school babe centric advertising idea. I know we discussed whether or not to include this.
You and I did not agree on this. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if you want to get into it here, but I thought we should include it. I thought you should include it, and I'm glad that you did.
Yeah. Well, thanks. So yeah, go to the article if you want to see a bunch of babes. So what we've done, and this is, you know how to talk about this. This is directly in line with the rise of the kind of the budget nostalgic lager trend that we're seeing. And basically, it's just a lot of like old school. We're tongue in cheek calling it babe centric 80s and 90s ads. So really, just like corny on the nose, scantily clad women pouring beer, like literally pouring beer all over themselves. Like just the shit that we kind of grew up seeing.
And can you remind me why you were considering dropping this from the article?
Well, yeah, I don't know. If you read it, I think you'll hopefully I get my ideas through. It kind of I still feel not that I made my point as well, but I feel like I just kind of struggled to make the argument at first. So here, you know me. You and I have been working together for a couple years now. I fundamentally don't want to tell anyone how they should or shouldn't live their lives, how they should or shouldn't market their brand. And I definitely don't want to tell people what's right or wrong. It's not my business. You can do whatever you want, especially today. And the market will let you know, whether or not what you're doing is cool or not. So I think that that's like the biggest part. I don't want to tell people that this is inappropriate for starters.
Yeah, I mean, devil's advocate. I know, like, you're a father now. You have two daughters. That
Yeah.
comes into it, and I know, like, we've had that discussion when we're talking about the soft to hard crossover. Like Sunny D or Mountain Dew wants to get into the alcohol business. Are they like marketing to children? Question mark. So I don't know. Is fatherhood influencing your opinion here in any way?
It has to, for sure. I don't think it's directly influence. I mean, like becoming a father obviously changed everything in my world, but especially becoming a father of daughters, like really dramatically changed my entire worldview. Just to come back to this, like I'm not worried about my kids grabbing these products. We don't have this in our house, but to your bigger point, I think the distinction I draw there is that, and again, one of the reasons I struggled with writing this section is that the women in these ads are adults, right? Like these are all adult people doing this stuff. They can decide whether or not they're comfortable with this, just as much as the breweries or the brands that are having the women in their ads can decide whether or not this aligns with what they want to do. Just as much as at the end of all this, like a consumer can decide whether or not this is cool and they want to support that. So no one's getting taken advantage of. So again, which is why I'm even here. Like I feel like I'm stumbling all over myself. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't me speaking from on high, like as to what I, from CODO design deemed to be acceptable or not in beer advertising, because I don't have a license to speak on that. And then also, like, I'm a guy, so what is my opinion doesn't matter. I'm not a lady. Like I'm a Midwestern dad. So what does my opinion matter? But again, I bristle at the thought of telling anyone how to run their business. I don't want to tell anyone I don't want anyone telling, you and I don't want people to tell us how to market and build CODO. So the point that I tried to make and that hopefully can get at here is that whether or not you find this sort of advertising funny, or maybe more importantly, like the goal is probably ironic or cool, like, oh, that's cool, or it's distasteful. It isn't really the point. I think that there's a broader idea that I was trying to loop in here is that we are in a time where beer is in decline, like really, really badly. Sales are down. This is big beer. This is certainly craft beer, but beer is declining in sales. And we're hearing a lot of conversation in the industry. Thought leaders are having real conversation around how can we grow this tent? How can we attract new people to the category? Because the folks that drove the beer boom, from let's just call it 2010 to 20, they're not drinking as much as they used to. They're drinking beyond beer. They're drinking spirits. They're enjoying cannabis, or they're not drinking at all, for whatever reason. We don't even need to dive into that. So we need to recruit new, younger drinkers is kind of where everyone goes. And those younger drinkers, we have data to back this up. They are, Gen Z is extremely diverse. It's, not to the traditional kind of white millennial dude cohort. We've got a couple articles out that explore this, but it just broad strokes for this conversation. The LDA Gen Z adults are not kind of what came before them.
Right, legal drinking age.
Thank you. Yeah,
LDA.
LDA. Yeah. So the youngest now legal LDA. Yeah, legal drinking adults are way more female, way more non here in the U.S. We should say. Though I imagine this is probably happening across the West. So way more female, way more non-white than any generation before them. And so if the beer industry wants to be relevant 10 years from now and still employ people and be like a meaningful part of culture and American culture and American business and be meaningfully relevant, we need to do a better job of speaking to new potential drinkers. And my God, it took me 20 minutes to get here, but this sort of babe-centric advertising is probably not the best first impression. Does that make sense at all? I just talked for like 25 minutes. And I don't know.
I mean, it's made sense from when you started talking about it.
Okay.
I think part of it is just an issue with us just being fundamentally uncomfortable with telling people what's right or what's wrong. I get that. The bigger point that this may ultimately hurt the overall category and recruitment at a time when we really need to be opening it up and inviting more people and thinking about other perspectives, women, younger folks, more folks with more diverse backgrounds in every sense of the word, to the table. Is that the best way to do it? I don't know that it is.
Yeah, you just said you just said in like one line what took me 20 minutes to get to. So yeah, you should be writing these reports instead of me, I think.
And there's another angle here too, is to see if, just to throw an example, women or fathers or, parents are like, they actually turned off by this sort of advertising? I mean,
Well,
is that actually happening?
yeah, and that's another reason why I don't. I had it in an earlier draft. You might have seen it. I don't think it made it into the final draft or not. I need to reread it, but this was very unscientific. But like I share this stuff with my wife, and I have her share it with her friends. I shared it with my mom, and just again from that very small group of people that I kind of shared this stuff with, no one was offended. The general consensus is that it was just kind of like a bro-y thing, which obviously it is.
Yeah.
But
So, I mean, it's fair to say, like, they're not necessarily clamoring to buy this stuff after seeing it, right?
Probably not. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so like, and Broy isn't even a value judgment. I mean, you just see it and go, okay, well, this is for this type of this beer is clearly for this type of person, and I'm not that type of person. Next, I'm going to go buy the next thing. So, yeah,
Got it.
okay, enough babe talk. Quit talking about babes here on the Beer Brain Trends podcast. Let's move on to the next topic, which is a fun one. This is one that I think we're going to be talking a lot about. I hope we're talking more about in the coming years. Small beers. So, Cody, what are small beers, and why do you and I? Why does CODO? Why do we seek them out wherever we go? Why do we drink 10 of them every time we end up at a small brewery?
Sure. I mean, small beers aren't anything new. So
No,
that's like a
no.
sub 4%, maybe 2 to upper 3% as a range for
Mhm.
alcohol. But we're starting to see more of them in our travels, and we really like them.
I love this. Like you and I won't speak for you, but I will, because I know you. We try not to get shit faced on the road, because we're on the road. It's already like hard being out away from home. So we try to stick with lagers, just try to drink less. But drinking small beers is really, really nice, because you can have a few more, and you like them more. I like them anyway more than non-alc beers. I mean, it'd either be like a hop water or a small beer would be kind of what I'd grab.
Yeah, I agree. We've heard from taproom managers and innovation folks as well, kind of the same stuff. They seem to occupy a really sweet spot with a lot of the value you would get from a non-alcoholic beer, but more flavor, and then like it's still actually beer, and just a little buzz if you want it, although you kind of have to work for it. The ultimate idea here is modulation, right, and moderation, and being able to control that, and not waking up on the road with a pounding headache.
I'm trying to think of Jim Leahy talking about being like right in the fucking cut, like just enough to to get a good buzz. Yeah,
Oh.
you can modulate how you're doing, and I love this. I hope it catches on. We got a handful of examples from around the country in the article here. The first time you and I really experienced this in the wild was McLighty's Light Lager. We were up in Vermont. From Zero Gravity. I think we got small beer. We've got Harpoon's Rec League, Sunday Beer, Goose Island Solo, Dad Strength, which is a fun name, and then another beer called Small Beer as well.
two small beers.
Different countries, I think. I don't know. We didn't work with them, so that's for them to sort out. But
I mean,
yes, like identical positioning as well.
Back in the old world, this is what we drank instead of water. So I guess it
Sure.
checks out. Yeah, I mean, I guess we should talk about that. Small beers are a thing, like table beers or medieval times beers that
Yeah.
are brewed over and over again, just literally made back in the day because of unsafe water.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's apocryphal or if I have that history at least partially correct.
Oh, yeah, that's my understanding as well. But yeah, no. But remember, styles don't matter today. So does calling something a small beer, which may or may not be a category, matter? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Maybe McLighty's is a better name. So there
Exactly.
you
Yeah. All right.
go. What's next?
Next section here, if I can scroll down, would be the rising importance of fruit and flavor forward beers.
Yes, I feel like half of our projects over the last year have centered around just blueberries.
Came out of nowhere, didn't it? It's like, yeah. Shout out to Wachusett. Shout out to Ordok. Shout out to Yeah, tons and tons of blueberry beers.
I think this topic also builds on the other ones we've mentioned. Back to style is less important today. Consumers really care about flavor
Yeah,
and that experience.
and vibes. Yeah, flavor and vibes.
You got to maintain the vibes. And blueberry beer, or really any fruit forward flavor bomb beer, and even some of the ones we've worked with, which are a lot more on the subtle side of things. They
Sure.
almost just like with juice, it's amazing. It just kind of suggests blueberry,
Dude, that beer is so goddamn good.
but the flavor's there, and it's a huge part of what it is. At this point, we can probably call like Juice Force and similar beers just kind of on their own category. Those
Yeah.
things are selling super well.
Yeah. And some markets and channels for sure. I think they're a great style or collection of styles. So like fruit beer, or I guess I don't want to just talk about blueberry, but just like fruit forward stuff, similar to hazy IPAs. I think that what we're seeing a lot of our clients talk about is how they see this as bringing non-craft drinkers to the industry. So producers and consumers are completely unbound by category now. You can drink whatever you want. You can get it from a brewery, you can get it from a distillery, you can get it from a lifestyle brand, you can get a store brand in a lot of cases even. So I think there's a real interesting value prop here. And this has been trending for a few years now. So this isn't just like a brand new of the moment thing, but we think it's going to be way more important in the immediate term as well.
Yeah, and I should probably tack on there. We were just up in Chicago for CiderCon, and
Yeah.
this isn't just limited to beer. This is across RTDs, across like this is a macro trend in the true sense of the word in Bev Alc. This flavor driven, like it's not just limited to beer, and it kind of does some. You do some category hopping here,
Yeah. Just flavor, capital F flavor.
which is
So
a really nice segue into what's next here.
CODO's favorite, which is hard cider. Are we going to put that on? We're complete aside here. I got our coffee kegerator squared away finally, so we can go back to having heart palpitations with cold brew.
A crippling addiction.
Yeah, just constant headaches and never sleeping. But I'm going to get our other kegerator squared away, and I think I want to put hard cider on again. But
It didn't last long the last time we did that.
no,
But
we
yeah,
blow
sure.
through it, and productivity goes real down. It's not good. We should probably not do it. Anyway, so we will do that. If you followed us for a while, you know how much we adore hard cider. In this section here, covers a few notes that we're seeing in our branding work in this segment. Plus, why I don't know that we're beating the drum loudly enough. I think that cider is about to have a moment. I think there's a lot of tailwind, and I think that the time is right for hard ciders for the industry itself. But I mean, I guess for our lens, we work with a lot of cideries, but for breweries releasing hard cider too, it's good.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to be an unqualified win for everyone in every case, but yes, hard cider category has got a lot going for it right now,
It
even
does.
just on a
Yeah.
personal level. But I think you can see the traction it has in people's minds as well.
Yeah, and we can maybe dive a little deeper into this just because I want to talk about cider now. But our first point in this section is on apples and provenance with the subhead: Does this scale? Does it have to? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So, and if you're new to hard cider, you can kind of think about this similar to wine, like having wine regions and certain grapes from certain areas.
Terroir, terror,
Terrier,
terriers,
terriers.
short
Think
hair.
of it in terms of the American Kennel Club. Provenance has always been an important value proposition in any craft beverage, wine, beer, cider, whatever it is. Cider sort of can have a leg up on beer in this regard. You can point to physical orchards, if you're producing from a certain grower, and trees and dirt and bees and baskets and tractors and old farm dogs and all of it to tell your story. For whatever reason, cider is just cleaving a lot closer to the agricultural story of a craft product. This stuff's wonderful. So if you have it and if it suits your positioning, you can flaunt it.
Yeah,
Anything that gives consumers a frame of reference for why your products are different, are good, need to be checked out. Anything like that should be explored. Um, what we've seen when building competitive set audits for work in the space, the current winners in cider, so Schilling, Blake's, Two Towns, Angry Orchard, all those guys, they don't hang their hats on this idea exclusively. It's a part of their story, where relevant, but looking at their packaging shows a broader focus on CPG beverage cues. So kind of back to flavor and personality and vibes. The stuff we
no different than beer. Yeah,
Right. the stuff we talked about earlier. And cider brands that are doing really well right now are, similar to beer and RTDs and FMBs. They're leading with their brand and flavor above all else. This is an important trend to keep in mind if you're cidery or brewery that might be considering launching a line of ciders. If you're thinking through how to appeal to a broader audience, going broader means a bigger potential audience that is already drinking across categories anyway. So meet them where they are. Anything to add there?
No, I think that captures it perfectly. The overly romanticized kind of agrarian vibe can work. I think it's tough to do at scale. So I guess that'd be the caveat, like we mentioned. But if you're set up for production distribution, you might. So if you're going big, you might find that sort of positioning limiting. But our next point, we keep going here. Ask the question: who's drinking hard cider?
Who's drinking all of this dang fruit juice? Did you cover this one?
It's me. I'm the one that's drinking.
it's just Isaac.
It's Isaac. Yeah, he's dry. He alone is driving the category. Broad brush time. Let's make some people offended. So a cider drinker is someone who drinks cross category, as you mentioned. They're drinking beer. They're not drinking cider exclusively. They're drinking NA, spirits, RTD, beer. Fairly gender neutral, though proportionately attracting more women than men compared to beer. We've seen some. You can find numbers that tell you anything you want, but the numbers we've seen is more women than men drink cider. But it's not like 80-20, it's more like 55 or whatever the balance would be. These sorts of drinkers are, I didn't want to do math on the fly. Cider drinkers are more health conscious, not always, but generally. Cider drinkers might have a health reason for drinking cider. So that could be like gluten-free or reduced or whatever like that. It's someone who enjoys flavor and sensory experiences, which you can make the same argument for beer. And then also we're seeing a lot of data to say that a cider drinker is young-ish. So it over-indexes with LDA, so legal drinking age, Gen Z folks, but also millennials and some Gen Xers too. So my favorite part of this section is a collection of my own completely anecdotal findings from our fieldwork over the last year. So one of my favorite things to do, we might have mentioned this in another episode, but whenever you and I are in a brewery tap room, whether I'm there for work or for pleasure, is to ask the servers and bartenders, like, what do people order a lot? Just what are you serving a ton of? Anecdotal, but every time I ask someone this question when they have cider, they mentioned that their cider is a crowd favorite. It's like without fail. And a few of I actually went through, I've got these kind of saved from our recent rebrand kickoff interviews, Cody. I've been saving them for an article I'm writing, or a newsletter issue on cider rather. 4 quotes that I really like here. Wine drinkers gravitate towards our cider because we don't serve wine. We see a lot of wives order it. So a lot of gluten-free folks, of course. We actually see a lot of younger guys order cider, particularly our dry cider. So a counter to that previous one. And then this is a really interesting one, and I think that a lot of breweries should be thinking about. Cider is a great answer to the question, what do you have that isn't beer? If you are a taproom manager, if you're a beer tender, if you're behind the stick, this is something that you will hear a lot. What do you have that isn't beer? Cider's a great question, or a great answer to that question.
Yeah, there's certainly overlap with beer drinkers here, particularly, folks just drink across categories. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
But I wouldn't make the mistake of viewing any audience as monolithic. People have different tastes and preferences. And hard cider can be a great addition, particularly in the on-premise, if that's something you're not already making or offering. We recorded an episode with Brandon and Kristen at AleSmith a few months ago, diving into their recent hard cider launch. We will link that in the show notes if you are interested in hearing more.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Great cider too. Drank one the other day. So
it is.
Our next point might be contentious. So we're still on hard cider. And this is about how you and I think about hard cider's favorite claim, which is gluten-free. Gluten-free, gluten-free, gluten-free.
Yeah.
It's the only claim. Only one that matters. Sorry.
This is a claim that comes up every single time we work on a cider brand. Yeah. I understand why. For folks who are cutting back or actually unable to ingest gluten, it's a critical differentiator. We recorded an episode about hard cider that explained how the gluten-free claim, punches far above its weight and can cast a broader halo effect over the rest of your brand. Like, oh, this is gluten-free. That must mean this is healthier than these other brands that maybe they have gluten. I don't know. But our caution on this, you need to mind the positioning trap.
Yeah, so it does have a major halo effect, but the positioning so I guess we should define positioning. So positioning, you can get really in the weeds here, but we boil positioning down to three major points. Like, what do you do or offer or make for whom? So who is your intended audience? And then how are you meaningfully differentiated from your competition? Your goal as a brand, so this could be a cider brand, a beer brand, a spirits, a cannabis, or whatever brand. Your goal as a company is to land in the top kind of 2 or 3 slots, in someone's head for a given, like in their brain for a given category. So as an example, close your eyes, unless you're driving. Then don't do that. What brand comes to mind when you think of non-alcoholic beer? How about what brand comes to mind when you think of canned water? And now give me what comes to mind when you're thinking of hard tea. If you're here in America, you probably answered Athletic, Liquid Death, and Twisted Tea, along with a handful of others. And
No O'Douls?
No O'Douls. Buzz balls. Okay, so from a consumer standpoint, positioning is how people categorize what you do in their minds. We can't remember the names and differences between hundreds of options. We can't even do that with dozens of options. We're not wired that way. Like, just for fun, like try to name 12 shampoo brands, or car brands even. Like try to do that. So what we look for is meaningful points of differentiation. That's what branding is all about. We look for story, value props, how your brand will help me. It's kind of woo-woo here, but how this will help me self-actualize and help me shape my own identity. We do this to categorize these things and make sense of the world in our head. So back to gluten now, which is the point I was trying to make. If you lead with the gluten-free claim, that is like, this is the A1 claim about your brand, that's how people are going to categorize your brand, not whatever story you're telling, not how your packaging looks, but that's the gluten-free product. They don't have gluten. Here's where you need to think strategically about audience size and industry direction. Leading cider brands are increasingly, like we mentioned, Blake's, Schilling, folks like that, are positioning themselves with like much broader mainstream CPG approaches. They're speaking to wider audiences about lifestyle, taste, occasion, vibes. They're not hanging their hat on niche attributes. Those things are in the mix, but they're not the lead. So when you think about audience size, think about gluten specifically, there are those that are medically or that medically require gluten-free products. That is a very dedicated, it would be a very fervent audience, but very small. There are health-conscious consumers who prefer gluten-free options. That would be a larger, but still maybe limited audience. And so you kind of run into the total addressable market for cider drinkers at large is significantly bigger than both of those two previous segments combined. Is this making sense? Am I making my point here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yep. Now, this doesn't mean you should ignore the gluten-free attribute. Like, don't get the wrong idea about that.
Not at all.
It is still valuable. We talked about the halo effect idea a little bit ago, but consider it as part of your broader story rather than just primary positioning. Think of it as a supporting proof point that reinforces your larger narrative rather than the narrative itself. Positioning is super important. It's probably the most important ongoing exercise that you engage in, whether you realize it or not. Unique claims like gluten-free can be tempting to lead with. Make sure you're not inadvertently limiting your brand's potential by focusing too narrowly on this benefit.
Yeah, the question isn't it shouldn't be can we claim this, but rather does this claim help us? God, helch. Ew.
Helch?
I need to go helch. Does this claim help us reach and resonate with our largest possible audience? Okay. Took way too long to make that point. Let's move on here. From here, we get into another beer branding trends email exclusive newsletter issue on cannabis.
Yeah, that's another big thing we're seeing in our work. Cannabis, hemp-derived, everything.
Cannabis, weed. Yeah, okay.
The silly stuff.
Devil's Lettuce.
We're giving a full rundown on everything we're seeing on. Yeah, we're doing a ton of cannabis. It started out as a trickle. I mean, even just 6 months ago, we were getting a few of the, and now it's a lot. It kind of came out of nowhere. So anyway, full rundown. That's going to be certainly evolving. We're drinking from a fire hose and learning a lot. We're going to be talking about that a lot in the coming year, probably. But subscribe to the newsletter and see what we have learned already. So, what's next? I feel like we're getting close to the end here. Let's speed run.
A short section on non-alc beer, canned water, and hop water.
That's right. This details a few interesting ideas we're seeing in the NA space at large. And we try to make a convincing argument for why your brewery should probably be exploring this space today, which brings us to the home stretch. Interesting section rather, but we can kind of move on here. Section 4 is the perennial fan favorite package design trends that we're seeing in beer and bev alc right now.
We can lightly skim through this section, if only because listeners, you should just go to the article and look at these because the visual examples are important.
Yeah, these are expressly visual, so I definitely want to look at. Literally.
And, this is an exciting industry, so the imagery is always beautiful, fun to look at. So go check it out. But
I'll just
give us a rundown.
I'll just list them out here. I mean, the trends are bifurcation, retro, specifically 70s and 80s, as the decades of prominence right now. Trend we're calling headed out west. Mascots part 3. I think this is the third year in a row that we've covered mascots. It just will not stop. We've got a visual trend called the occult. Which is fun. So it's like spooky season year round. Which
I approve.
My kids and I both approve of, and I think that does it. Actually, that wraps up that section, and I think this is a tight hour. We should probably wrap this up. That's a rundown on our 2025 beer branding trends review. We got a lot of content coming out on this. Obviously, we got the article itself, which you can read at the link in our show notes. We've got some exclusive newsletter issues coming out. We've got some podcasts coming out. But read the article again. Link in our show notes. And next week we're going to be back here talking about what's our first one? I forget. Ending with a thud here. How to future-proof your flagship. So that's going to be a fun episode. Come check it out. And Cody, thank you for making your time to do this morning. Appreciate it.
Isaac, the pleasure is all mine.
Dramatic pause.
Thanks for listening to Beer Branding Trends. If you like what we're doing here, if you find this valuable, please rate and review us over on iTunes. And head over to beerbrandingtrends.com to join more than 5,000 subscribers who receive our monthly email newsletter covering strategy, currents, and actionable advice from CODO Design, a branding firm on the front lines of beer and beverage branding. Take care. We'll catch back up with you soon.